Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. On October 30th, 1938, an incident took place that has consequences that we are still being affected by today. But while the incident did take place, the effects that we are told did not. For those of you who haven't guessed, I'm talking about the infamous Orson Wells War of the Worlds broadcast. What happened is, CBS, back when they were radio only, liked to put on performances every Sunday through the Mercury Theatre, where a young Orson Wells was starring. And he was trying to make his name. He was one of the first people to put a play on the radio with an entirely African American cast. The man was innovative. I don't think there's a single person that would say he's not on the list of top 100 actors in the world of all time. Depending on your preference and your culture, we can all agree on it. And if you listen to the broadcast, it was pretty innovative for its time. After that, things get a little fuzzy. We can agree Orson Wells did a good job. What we can't agree on is the so-called panic that happened. How do we know this? Why? There's a few reasons. First of all, the police reports don't indicate anything unusual about that night. Yes, a few people here and there might have panicked and done something crazy, but the police reported it was a pretty normal night. Your odd drunks, the wrong people trying to break into the wrong building, they don't report any mass panic or mass hysteria. Secondly, the Mercury Theatre and CBS Radio did this every Sunday night. Every Sunday night. It'd be like you tuning into Star Trek and getting worried that the Borg were invading. You know, it's Star Trek. And the Mercury Theatre itself actually had a warning that came on every so often saying this is a fictional representation of the H.G. Wells book, War of the Worlds, and they were covering their bases. They weren't dumb. But people in the 1930s were not boobs. We tend to get this idea of people panicking, oh my God, there's aliens coming, oh no. But like I said, it would literally be the same as you watching a movie and getting freaked out by it. They knew Sunday nights, whatever time of night it started, CBS had a show on. There's even a report by a patrol officer about him finding some kids, and they were trying to, get home to see if CBS had a good show on that night. Remember, the 1930s, radio was not new. Telephones were not new. This isn't like World War I, where you got farm boys going into frontline positions and seeing, artillery and tanks and planes for the first time. This is the 1930s. But the only thing that they didn't have that we had today was computers that actually are worthy of the name. They had simple electronic devices, but other than that, they had rockets. They were not very impressive, but they were rockets. They had planes. Even the first jet was only a few years away from being built. So the idea that people would panic over CBS, a major broadcaster, playing a fictional report during their regular time is idiotic. What people don't understand, and this is why I struggle very much with the mystery airship sightings of the late 1800s and early 1900s, is that papers like to sensationalize things. They would take a rumor or a report and run with it because it helped them sell extra copies. This is back in the day where a newspaper would come out 2 or 3 times a day. That doesn't happen anymore. You know that corny scene in all the old movies, extra, extra, read all about it, with some kid there selling papers? Well, that was an extra edition. And if you bought it, you would get to read what the breaking news of the day is. Some people talk about tension over war in Europe. Yes, World War II was on the horizon, but this was still when most people were pretty optimistic about peace. Chamberlain hadn't stepped off the plane with his, peace in our time document. But at the same token, most people in the United States were pretty assured they were not going to be involved in it, at least not immediately. So even the argument of tension over World War II doesn't hold water. Now, I'll tell you what does hold water. Newspapers looking for what's called hard copy. And like I said about the airships, some of these reports were made up out of thin air. Whole cloth, just wished into existence by some people. There are pranksters involved that claim horrible things. And they were running around, and the newspapers thought it would be a good idea to try to drum this up because CBS was their competition. This is back when the radio and newspapers were in competition, and the newspapers were genuinely concerned that radio was going to knock them out of business. The good news is both are still around today. The internet didn't kill radio, and it didn't kill the TV. It didn't kill newspapers. People still like to hold solid books in their hand and solid newspapers. And also, it's really hard to kill a fly with a laptop, where it's very easy with a bit of newspaper. Back to the War of the Worlds broadcast. They always say, follow the money. And I always think this is good advice. So, first bit of money that we can see being made out of this is the newspapers. They got to sell stories. And they were interviewing Orson Wells and his other actors. They made their money. They got their dollars. But you know who got the most dollars out of this whole incident? Orson Wells. This took him from a local little celebrity in 1938 to filming Citizen Kane in 1941. Within 3 years, he was catapulted onto the big screen, which back then was everybody's dream. He cashed in. He made his fame count. And of course, his deep baritone voice and his ability to follow script, which is a lot more difficult than most people realize. He made the money, so it was in his best interest to keep the whole panic storyline going, because it made him seem larger than life. This is a man that can make an entire region, go berserk just by his words. And he was also the one who set up the plays, produced, directed, all that jazz. Now, the problem with the War of the Worlds broadcast, quote, panic, end panic, which never happened aside from in the minds of a very few people at most, who didn't realize how radio worked. Radios are like TVs. They follow a schedule. They have programs at certain times and everything. So you'd have to be particularly clueless by this time, because radio had been around for nearly 30 years, kind of like the internet is now. And in a similar way, we're seeing the internet. People go insane over the information that they get over the internet. Don't believe what you read on the internet, as said by Abraham Lincoln. I do find that meme amusing. But seeing as how it was in Orson Welles' best interest to keep the news of the panic going, what other ramifications does that have? Well, it's been pointed to by every single major think tank until recently that humans can't handle the idea of another extraterrestrial existence. some sort of alien life. But now that we understand all those reports are based on information that's false, misleading, and quite exaggerated, what does that mean? A new study done, I think it was in the 2010s, said that most people would not be bothered by alien contact. They would say, "Oh yeah, that happens." The church has said, yes, we believe that there's possibly other beings in the universe. Pretty much everybody's accepted it in the 2000, after the year 2000. Let's keep it at that. It's hard to say with the older generations, but after 2000, I think you'd be hard pressed to find more than a handful of people that would deny aliens exist. I'm one of the ones that don't particularly believe they visited us, but I stand to be corrected. Believe me, it wouldn't be hard to change my mind. It's just right now, from what I see, I don't believe it's a factor. But when you look at the Condon report, they like to exaggerate things like that and push them out of context. It allows them to forward their own agenda. And even though their factual basis is non-existent, they would still have you believe they know best. The government and the think tanks have all the money, all the knowledge, and all the power. And they're willing to keep it from us. And that's why it suits them, who have the money, to keep the truth from us. We're still suffering from this, I don't want to call it a hoax, but, because I want to be polite. Orson Wells took the opportunity that was handed to him. A lot of people were just trying to make their own jobs. They're trying to do their jobs. So like I said, it's hard for me to sit here and say it was a hoax. But it would be a conspiracy to let people imagine what they want out of the incident and just choose not to correct them. 1930. 90 years ago, for 90 years, we've been paying for this transgression. Will we ever get the truth? Who knows? I do find it more and more difficult to believe that so few whistleblowers have stepped up, aside from like Edward Snowden and, oh my God, Robert, can't remember his name at the moment, but he was the one that came out of Area 51. George Knapp interviewed him. He had the blacking out of his face. Oh, why can't I remember his name? But anyways, a few people have come forth, but their actual credentials seem suspect. We don't really have one smoking gun that we can point at and say, here, this explains everything. And I believe a lot of it is explainable in conventional terms. When the United States was testing its first jets, one thing that the pilots did is they would put on a gorilla mask. That's right. They were flying out of what would one day be known as Area 51, the latest fighters that the Air Force had to offer, and they would wear gorilla masks. Now, why, you might ask? Very simply. No one's going to believe that you saw a gorilla flying a plane with no propellers. You see? It's that simple for a conspiracy to develop. Just one person with an idea, they spread it amongst their friends, and all of a sudden, disinformation spreads. Now, it's hard to fault them in World War II from trying to make something ridiculous because spies were everywhere. But right now in 2022, we got spies everywhere, nationwide, internationally, you name it. Nobody knows who is on whose side. And yeah, just remember, what we are being told is not always the truth. And at some point, I do intend to do a full episode on the the phantom airships. It's just something I've been researching forever, and I'll get to it. But for now, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to buy a book on the link listed down below in the comments. And we hope you have a fantastic day.